It's going to, what we worry about is bacteria. So you need something that's going to do that 0.2 micron size. We really don't have to deal with viral load. Now, I do have a couple pictures here, some filters that I've been introduced to that are for viruses. And it's pretty gross, but their demo of this, well, you might have seen, anybody see my gross demo of this? A couple people saw my YouTube video. Yeah, I mixed up cow manure, chicken manure, mixed up all this stuff in a big old aquarium and scooped, and it's got the nastiest stuff I could find, and was drinking the water through this filter. I mean, that's pretty dumb, but my wife's a pharmacist, so she can keep me alive when I do dumb things. So that filter is 10 times better in terms of size. It's a 0.015 micron, and it will take any virus. The smallest virus is a polio virus at 0.025. 0.015 is that filter, and it will filter out anything. So it'll take sewage, you can put blood in it, you can drink it. I know that sounds gross, but it will filter anything out. It will not desalinate, so if you live near the coast or you find yourself near the coast, it cannot desalinate. It can't take glucose or salts out, but it produces sterile water that you could perform surgery with. So anything that comes out of that is sterile. That is the lifesaver. That's the bottle. And this jerry can, these two items, I found they're issued to the British military. They have every one of their Humvees has a lifesaver jerry can in it, which has the same micron filter. So they can be in Afghanistan or wherever in the world, and it doesn't matter what the water source is, they're not going to get sick because they can filter anything out of it. They have built-in pumps, and you can't overpump them. They're neat. They're new to me, but that's typically not what we need. We need the things that take out Giardia, take out the crypto and all the cysts, and have the ability, even if you have chlorinated water, to remove that. They have carbon inserts in them. Most of the filters have carbon and then silver impregnated. Some don't want to give you their recipe, what they have in the filter, but for some reason most water filters are made in England, I think because they're ahead of us because their water is horrible and they've been working on it for years. And so they have good filtration systems. The other thing I'd mention is just to have some pool shock on hand. 72% calcium hypochlorite. $4 will treat 10,000 gallons of water, and nobody's going to get sick. So if you do need to take and treat that pond water, the calcium hypochlorite is basically pool shock. It's granulated. Again, Clorox is useless after 4.5 years, and it's going to drop 50% of its strength every year. So you don't want to rely on the bottles of Clorox you've stored. You could get people very sick at that 3-year mark thinking you're treating them correctly. So that pool shock, just don't store this stuff around your tools, chainsaws, anything metal, because it's very caustic and it will corrode them. Put them in the original containers they come in. The plastic bags at about 5 years will just be eaten away. But the granular pool shock's really good. People say, oh, gross, chlorine. But my goal is to keep everybody safe. Keep them from getting sick. You're not going to get sick at the level that you treat it. You're basically going to make your own Clorox solution using calcium hypochlorite. And it's very cheap. For $4, 10,000 gallons of water will keep a lot of people happy and healthy. The other thing I do have up here is a whole house. I've put a few of these in where you can actually take your well water or rain catchment water and pump that water through a ceramic filter. It's a whole house 6-candle filter, and you can create potable water from any source with that. And I'll just mention, life straws are great just because they're light, hang around the neck. We gave some to some guys that train. They do search and rescue. They rescue their assets from Benghazi, and they do some crazy austere medical, and they love that. They use a SteriPEN to kill anything in the water, and then they drink what they've put the SteriPEN in, and they drink it through with a life straw through there as a backup or redundancy, because they always have to have at least two ways, and I recommend we do, have 2 ways to purify our water. So you could pool shock your water and then run it through your Berkey or whatever other gravity-fed filter. Then you have 2 ways that you know that you're not going to get sick. And if you don't want to deal with the chlorine, the Berkey will take that out. Your carbon inserts will take that out. Or you can make your own carbon. You can make your own charcoal and filter it, and it does a great job. And we can make activated charcoal just with all the wood we have around us. Filtration, I think that's it. All right, we are going to change gears a little bit now. I've got 2 hours left, Richard told me. No, rats, I better hurry up. Energy, so water, I kind of skimmed the surface, we covered a lot, but I need to move along. Energy, And I do tell people a little bit of electricity goes a long way. You might not be able to even come close to affording what you're using now if you had to make it yourself, because it's very expensive to do. But a little bit of electricity, whether it's just to keep my communication gear, my radios, keep my comms up and going, my ham radio set up, a shortwave, be able to charge my, if I got a AA plan for batteries, if I want to keep my flashlights, my shortwave, my 2-meter radios, how many things can you do with AA batteries? A lot. And if you can keep that going, you've done you're way ahead of the game. Maybe you have security perimeter sensors, and they chew up batteries, but they're a lot cheaper to feed than me. I can keep those batteries charged, and I don't have to put as many calories into that. That solar is going to keep these batteries charged, and I've got these sensors out there telling me that's either food or foe. There's something out there at 2 in the morning, and I'm going to go deal with it. It might be tasty, it might be trouble. And I got to go, but how do I keep the batteries going? That's something we need to think through. So just small amount of power, and up to running your whole place if you want to. And then cooking's big. I'm more of a pyromaniac, I guess. I'm always burning something, some sort of wood, some sort of stove, figuring out what works best. But having, and no propane, we'll talk about propane. But do you have enough BTUs to calories? You've got all this food from wherever, emergency essentials, Mountain House. Have you figured out how many BTUs, how much energy it's going to take to convert that into something consumable? And it's a lot. And people say, and I'm way ahead of myself. I'll stop there because I'm going to talk about it. And sanitation. This is the most overlooked thing for preppers that I see when I visit is hot water. What ways can I stay clean? How do I make enough hot water, take care of my family, my wife, my children, my neighbors? How can they stay clean? And ways to make hot water are something we're going to talk about here. Fuels, just a little bit on fuels. I heard somebody mention propane. I like everything. Having as many different alternatives and backups from diesel to propane to gasoline to kerosene to lots of wood. So just, in all of these, and I won't get into all of them, but with propane, obviously it's a no-brainer. It stores easy. People give me flack. Why'd you put that propane tank next to your house? Somebody's going to, blow it and shoot it, and it's going to go up in flames. Really, the only way that happens is if you start a fire under my propane tank and then shoot it. But you can shoot a propane tank, and they've done it many times. I don't recommend trying this, but it's a big cloud of vapor. And they've shot them with tracer rounds, and there might be a propane guy in here that's going to give me flack afterwards, but you don't have to store it on time. There's a minimum distance from your location, and then you can bury them as well if you're really concerned about that. Just bury your propane tanks, and that's another thing. And I always recommend burying 2 tanks. Instead of buying one big propane tank, buy 2. Valve it so that one is valved off, because a lot of times propane company will valve them together and they're both coming down at the same time. So whoops, the grid goes down and I'm caught with 20% of my propane. I always, just valve it off. It's money in the bank. Not touching that one, and I'll just live off of this one or alternate between the 2. But I always try to do, instead of doing a 1,000-gallon tank, I'll do 2 500s. And that way I know that I've got that, and then I can start to conserve knowing that I've got 400 gallons of propane on the property at all times. Gasoline, there's all sorts of additives and things, and some are good, some are bad. The number one factor on your fuel storage is, like any storage, whether it's food, is cool, dry, not exposed to the elements. It's the thermal expansion of the fuel that introduces water every day, condensation. This is the worst. That's a nightmare. Out in the sun, that tank heats up. If it's a quarter full of diesel, and expands, and every night water ends up inside of that tank. And once the water's in there, the bacteria starts, and then you need some sort of biocide. And I recommend with diesel now, with the sulfur being at 15, used to be 15, it is 15 parts per million now of sulfur. It doesn't last as long as it used to. I used to get 10 years out of diesel, cannot do it now. And so you want a biocide at a minimum if you're treating a diesel for a long period of time. Talked to a bunch of diesel mechanics. They just kind of got in the habit now of using a biocide to treat their diesel fuel. But if you can keep that tank full and out of the weather and cool, not necessarily, you could bury them, but the buriable tanks are very expensive, but at least contained in a building out of the sun, you'll get many years out of that. Gasoline, easily 2 years if treated and handled correctly. Okay, let's move on for fuel. Batteries, again, this is something, what batteries do I use? What batteries are best? Everybody wants to cheap out on their batteries. I'm going to go down and, I'm just going to get some car batteries at Advanced Auto Parts, and I'm going to build my off-grid paradise. And they really, those batteries are done in about 1.5 to 2 years because they're just getting hammered every day. They weren't built for that. There's all different types of lead-acid batteries. And we're still in the lead-acid battery market. Lithium-ion for these aren't really working so well. But and AGMs, and I won't get into those details, I'll bore you to death. But the main thing is you want to keep, a battery just has so much life in it. It has so many cycles in it. And what I want to do is I want to short cycle that battery. I just want to discharge a little bit of energy and be able to put it back in there, whether it's with solar or a generator or pedal power or something. I want to put power back in there. And the more I do that, I know a gentleman that has a battery bank that's lasted 22 years. And I know people with the same battery bank that has lasted 22 months. And we're talking $8,000 battery bank. But it's how they're treated. And as you know, the adage, make hay while the sun shines. You do all your heavy loads, your laundry and your cooking and everything you've got to do electrically when there's sun on your solar panels. So you're almost not necessarily bypassing your batteries, but in essence, you're not robbing anything out of your battery bank once you have sun on there. So it's like, sunny day, we're going to cut hay. Well, we're going to run our electrical appliances because I'm not going to hurt that battery bank. And people that live off the grid already know that. And then there's different types. A gel cell is a much better battery to use if you're off-grid than an AGM. And because it can take the hammering of, because when the sun goes down, if you're only got 4 hours a day of charging and you're living 20 hours on nothing, then you want a battery that can handle the cycles a lot better, and the gel cells do a good job with that. There's a lot of battery talk. I won't get into that. I'm going to keep moving. Wood. My goal, I set out as a prepper to do everything possible known to man that we are used to in our modern society with water and wood. And that is to stay warm, to cook, to stay clean, to make electricity, to make weapons. No, just kidding, not making weapons. No water cannons or anything like that. But and that's what I've been after. And you can do, we have a ton of biomass, a lot of wood in our area, and you can do all of those things with wood. And just the key is usually moisture content, having enough stored. I wouldn't store it more than 5 years. You start having diminishing returns as the wood starts to break down. And again, storing this correctly is very important. But we'll talk about some of that. Propane, propane's good. I meet a lot of off-gridders that have a combination of solar and propane, and they use their solar to stretch out that propane as long as they can possibly do it. But maybe you don't feel good that day, and you really have to cook and feed the kids. Well, I turn the propane on, and I cook, and I'm good. But for the most part, I'm going to use some sort of alternative, whether it's wood or solar. And I'm thinking grid down. Grid's down for a month. What am I going to do? I'm not going to touch that propane, but it's nice to have it where I can cook, take a shower, even whatever, dry clothes, run lights, refrigeration. Almost every appliance in your house can be switched over to propane. And that's one of the biggest things we get into talking energy is lower your loads. A lot of people say, I'll just take my house and put solar on it. And that's the biggest waste of money that you could ever do. You want to lower your electrical loads down, use with alternatives and smarter ways of living. Right now, we just live in electric homes for the most part that use way too much energy. Again, here's some appliances, everything, generators, ranges, on-demand water heaters. So propane has a place, and then solar complements it very nicely. Resupply. I'm going to start with some very simple things and work up. So simple things, using your own body to make electricity. The military's done it for years, having the ability to have electricity with a hand crank generator or a bicycle generator. There's some people say that's ridiculous. Well, it's not ridiculous if you live in an apartment and you can't do solar, you can't run a generator, or you want to stay super silent. These are silent ways to make electricity to keep my communication. I don't care if it's just 4 days I want to keep my cell phones going, my laptop going, or I want to keep my ham radio going. There's a place for it, and if you want to make electricity, there's some mechanical human methods to do it. Another thing is energy harvesting, being able to make electricity off of heat. Hopefully next year I'll have my gizmo. I have one in my shop. It's an organic Rankine cycle where I'm just gonna, if you can start a fire, you can run your entire electric home. And it can be done. And that's just using waste heat. There's more waste heat energy around us than there is any solar, hydro, wind, throw it all together. There's more waste heat energy in the United States than that's another whole subject. But you can harvest this and make electricity. Some of you might have these little fans that sit on your wood stove. That's an example. There's that little gizmo there is a wood stove charger. I could set it on a wood stove and charge 12-volt batteries with it. And that's a neat option. These little power pots for backpacking, bushcraft, whatever, I can make 5 watts of electricity. I got to heat my water from my food anyway. At the same time, I'm charging for lighting or whatever. And then some of you seen these commercially available biolights and things that make electricity. They're kind of neat. So again, human power, starting and then going to energy harvesting, and then obviously a gazillion different types of generators. And I've pretty much experimented with all these, from the portables, converting them to run on multiple fuels. I like the little Hondas. They're expensive, but boy, they're quiet. They're long runners. They're very efficient, 9 hours on a gallon of fuel. Switch it, what's that? 5,500 watt. You mean companioning them together? Now this, yeah, he's talking about companioning, the Hondas you can companion together to get 6,000 surge, 4,800 continuous. You can actually daisy chain these things together to run. They're each 1,600, but they're easily converted to propane, and you can also run them on wood gas if you get into gasification. Then propane generators, they can be loud, but a lot of the new enclosures keep it really, really quiet. Don't go by my YouTube videos. They're really, my camera amplifies it. It's like, what is that racket? It's really not that loud. It's my camera. If you have a tractor, these are great. I gave one to my dad for Christmas, and he runs his entire place. Just like hooking up a bush hog or a piece of farm equipment, you hook up this generator and 16,000 watts off the back of a tractor just chugging along at 1,600 RPMs. Runs the entire place, will run for days. Usually people keep their tractors running, maintain. You know, a lot of people with their generators, when the ice storm comes, the battery's dead, something's not working. My fuel's bad, my battery's dead, something went in it. But my tractor's usually, if my tractor's not running, there's something wrong. And I just hook up to the PTO, hook it through a transfer switch, and I'm just cruising along, and I can go for days and days with a little diesel. We'll chug along. And the portables have a place, but they're loud and obnoxious, and definitely won't do well for you in security. But if you need power to do something emergency-wise, you need to weld something, having a generator is great. And there's no solar generator on the market, no matter how deceitful the people that advertise them are. They can't compete power-wise, so watch out. A lot of people get ripped off on generators, on the solar generators. I got another hour? No, okay. Wood. From heating, I mean, wood cook stoves are my favorite things to have for simplicity. If I have a hand pump, the Amish laugh at us. They have hand pumps and wood cook stoves. Do they do fine? They do absolutely fine. They stay warm, well-fed, sanitized? No, they stay clean, using wood and water, and they just use these kind of stoves. I love them. You can cook, you can tie the water coils in with your existing domestic water systems and take a hot shower. I just got to start a fire. There's outdoor wood boilers that do really well, and then you can get crazy, build your own gas fires, go running down the road in a contraption that looks like that. People might laugh at you, but they might not in the future. Solar power, quickly, portable starting off. You can build your own. Solar's a mystery to some folks. It doesn't have to be. I've got a couple little things on my table. If you want to see, you can ask me about that. And there's portable solar generators. They are expensive. The batteries, the solar. But the only power you truly have with these guys is the solar panel. Everybody says, I'm 1,600 watts. I'm 5,000 watts. Yeah, for a second. I'll make a cup of coffee for you on Monday, and I'll have to wait till Thursday to make another cup of coffee for you. And that might sound funny, but that is true. It's just math. I can only have so much power in. I've got to charge that battery up. So they all lie. I'm sorry, they do. And and I see a lot of people buy these Yetis and Goal Zeros, and they have a place. But rate it by the amount of solar you have, because I'm thinking living long term, not just for an hour. okay? Because I can pull anything out of that battery for an hour and do a lot, but then it's dead for many days because I got to put all that energy back in there somehow. Security, this is just showing, if you have a security system set up, perimeter defense set up, and it requires batteries, you better have a way to charge those batteries because they will chew them up, especially if you got a lot of bear, a lot of deer in your area. Whole house solar is great, and you can take any home and retrofit it and just say, I just want to run 12 circuits, or I want to run a certain number. There's this balance of going from portable solar up to whole house, and you don't have to run the whole house, but you can retrofit any house. I don't care if it's 10,000 square foot or 1,000 square foot. You can add solar and make a separate panel that runs when the grid goes down. This is my secure load panel, and it's going to be live to take me through running off of batteries and solar. And they can be as fancy. You basically have solar running an inverter charger to a battery bank. And use the grid. I love grid interactive systems because it's when it's 2 in the morning and there's no solar, I'm going to trickle charge. I'm going to keep my batteries floated. So use the grid. And if you're on vacation or away, I sell it back, I dump it back on the grid. And so use the grid while the grid is there. Why? Because it keeps my batteries ready for the rainy day or the time that I'm going to need them the most. Hybrids, if you have the ability to add a hydro, add wind, add generators, so you could have 4 things charging at least 4 things charging batteries, and the more just backups to backups. We know that. Hydro, micro hydro, don't have time to get into it. There are several of you that have good hydro sites, but a lot of times by the time you make that power, you're so far away from your home that the delivery you lose a lot of energy getting it to where you need to go. That just takes some basic calculations. But the first, find out how much power you're using. That's the first thing I would recommend to everybody. How much power are you using? Where can I conserve? I can save thousands and thousands of dollars if I just redo my home in a way that's more conducive to solar. And cooking. I keep saying this. Find ways to cook and not 4 canisters of propane or Coleman fuel, because that's going to last you about a week. If you're really, a basic beans and rice recipe in a crock pot takes about 3,000 watts in 12 hours. It's going to burn up all your propane and everybody's going to have one meal. So you really need to think ahead on do you have enough fuel? If you've got a wood source, just make sure it's dry. There's a lot of stoves that work really, really good, use a minimal amount of fuel, and you can cook, pressure cook, you can do all of those things on these little stoves. Again, the wood stove, I'm going through this. And a lot of times the wood stove is frustrating to people because when all your crops come in, your vegetables in, and you're canning all these things, it's so hot you don't want to fire one of these up. So you can build an outdoor building, maybe on a porch or summer kitchen concept, works really nice. So you've got a place, this is where we're going to process the food, and the heat is outside. I think I'm going to get to hot water because I'm out of time. I'm almost out of time. What do I got, 5 minutes? He's not there. I got an hour. Hot water. The most overlooked prep. There's a lot of ways to do this. I want to share one thing because I'm out of time, but there's some hybrid water heaters that GE sells, and this is called a geyser. You don't have to do a solar hot water heating system. If you have a solar system, you can make enough electricity because these are about 300% more efficient than a traditional electric water heater, but they'll run on 110, burn about 700 watts an hour. But it's another way you can retrofit them to your existing systems and make hot water. There's a lot of ways. I like the on-demands. The EcoTemp's real good, the Readiness, but there's a lot of ways. Don't discount a coil in a wood cook stove, though. That's the way the Amish do it every day. They just get old junk water heaters, they rip all the electrical stuff out of them because they're not allowed to have electricity, and they just use it as a storage tank, start a fire. They've got hot showers because they've been doing it forever. But being able to stay clean, whether it's your laundry, taking a shower, come up with a method. If you need to talk to me later, I'd be happy to help you with that. And then my last slide is just if you need help, we've got a website, we have a YouTube channel, a mobile app, writing a book, traveling all over the place, having a lot of fun, helping people get prepared. So I guess we'll do a Q&A later. Good enough time to, we have Dr. Fortune coming up next. So thank you very much for your time. Come see us.